Hello, you're welcome to another episode of Law Lifestyle and Basics. My name is Timothy Lasimona. For those who are just joining us, I'm a lawyer and civics educator. I like to educate people about their rights because, as it is said in law, ignorance of the law is no excuse. And so today we're talking about some interesting facts about tenancy relationships that you probably didn't know about. First of all, I know it's common parlance and local parlance to say I'm renting a flat or to call the relationship between a landlord and a tenant. Some people refer to as a rent. But actually, the meaning of the word rent is the consideration price that you pay for staying in another person's house. That's its rent. So when people say, okay, in Yoruba, for example, we live in rent and stuff like that, the relationship between a landlord and his tenant is called a tenancy agreement. That is, if it is less than 3 years. If it's anything above 3 years, it's called a lease. It's called a lease, 3 years and above. But if it's 3 years, under 3 years, it's called a tenancy. So the rent is just the amount. So when people say what's the rent rate, I think that's almost like repetition. So the rent is just, for me, it's just interesting. I found that out when I was, I think my 300 or 400 level in school, and for me it was just quite peculiar that the proper definition of the word rent is a money, a sum paid to your landlord, you being a tenant. So there are many questions that revolve around landlord and tenant relationships. For example, people want to know if we've gotten the right quit notice. People want to know, what happens when my rent has expired. Can the landlord still evict me? The truth of the matter is, your notices will depend on the kind of relationship that you have with your landlord, you being a tenant. For a yearly tenant, that's a tenant that you pay per year. You'll be entitled to 6 month notice, and I know that this is quite popular and common, but there's some confusion sometimes when people who are owing rent or have overstayed the duration of the rent, they still expect that when the chips are down and when what they call a conflict between parties arises, they still think that, oh, I'm still entitled to 6 months notice because I'm a yearly tenant. No, once your tenancy expires, once your rent, that's the amount paid, elapses, there's an affliction of the period of your tenancy, you're not entitled to notice any longer. So you cannot be holding someone ransom. You cannot be a debtor to your landlord. Most so, especially because this tenancy in question is for a fixed rate. So you cannot be a tenant, a defaulting or a debtor, let's just use the word debtor, and yet still claiming that you now have rights, because upon that period of 1 year lapsing, your rights have elapsed. You're only entitled to 6 month notice by adventure the landlord wants to evict you before the expiration date of in your contract, in your agreement. So for the yearly tenants, you're entitled to 6 month notice, and that 6 month notice is meant to expire on the eve of the anniversary. Let's say, for example, I get into a property, I'm a tenant in a property, and the tenancy starts on the 1st of January 2024. If my landlord were to serve me a quick notice, that quick notice is meant to expire on the 31st of December. That is the eve. We say Christmas Eve is 24th of December, while Christmas is 25th. Yes. So your tenancy is meant to expire, rather the quick notice is meant to expire on the eve of the anniversary. That means that the lawyer has to calculate it in time. So your notification comes 6 months before the eve of your anniversary. That will be due notice. So we also have different kinds of tenants. You have what they call them. You have monthly tenants. A monthly tenant will be entitled to a month's notice, and a weekly tenant will be entitled to 7 days notice. There are also other notices, in respect of tenancy. For example, once you're noticed to quit, the expiration date there has expired, that period has expired. The next thing the landlord will possibly do, if you're still holding over, and mind you, when you hold over, you'd still pay rent, even if you rely or imagine that because you have statutory protection as a statutory tenant, you begin to imagine that okay, you can still hold over. Yes, while you hold over and you tell your landlord to do his worst, you can go to court, and the period of your staying over, you'll be entitled or required to pay what is called the means profits. I put the spelling on the screen. So you still be paying. So either ways, you cannot just hold the landlord to ransom. So, and then upon the expiration of your notice to quit, duly served notice to quit, the next thing the landlord will be doing is issuing you a 7 days notice of owner's intention to recover premises. 7 days notice, and thereafter, if you don't do the needful, you'll be taken to court. So I hope this was helpful, and I really hope that we really just become law-abiding citizens. However, I'm aware that there are some cases where you have a rent review clause or a tenancy renewal clause. That means that the landlord and the tenant have put in an agreement that even though I'm a yearly tenant, that this relationship is subject to renewal. So in that case, it's expected that if the landlord is not going to renew your relationship, your tenancy, it should give you due notice. Sometimes they can say 3 months notice to the expiration and all of that. So please, let's be law abiding. I know this is a contractual relationship. It's not between the state and you. You're not committing a crime. And yes, I really want to use this opportunity and avenue to say that for debt owed, whether it's rent, the payment or default in payment of rent or otherwise, any debt owed, no one has the right to sue you in a civil matter, in a contract, charge you to court. It will be right. It will be very wrong. Personally, I'm very, 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 sympathetic. In fact, sympathetic is not even good enough. I have a strong bias against people who intimidate people with undue and unnecessary police arrest. If you have a civil relationship with someone, a contract, even if you loan the person the money, and at the end of the day you arrest the person with the police, and knowing that this is probably a civil case, I would always champion that, especially when you remand the person in custody for not having committed an offense, but just the fact that you have a breach of contract. I would be all for it that the person sue, the person who reported them to the police for, false imprisonment. False imprisonment is an abuse of their right under law for you to just remand the person in police custody. It's false imprisonment. It's a breach of their rights, freedom to movement as guaranteed under the Constitution. So, and they can sue you in fact, money well over what they're owing you. So let due procedure and due diligence be carried out. Do the right thing. Okay, if they're owing you and it's a contractual relationship, make sure you file a civil claim, a civil action. Don't take them to the police. And let me tell you for free, the police will welcome. They might know and they might not know. They'll welcome you to the table. Okay, sometimes in some cases, certain police officers, who are in breach of the law, we've had experiences of certain, might not be all of them. Okay, so we consider and we value the integrity of the police force. However, in some cases, real life cases, we've heard of people being extorted. So the what they call it, the reporting party, the party filing the matter at the police station pays, and the person who is also being charged or brought to the police station also pays. So it's almost like you're bringing food to the table of unscrupulous, men. So please, let's be very careful. Do not bully people with the Nigerian police. The Nigerian police is not at the beck and call of your private wishes, whims, and caprices. Alright, this was the meet up like our last one. Once again, low lifestyle and basics, and you're wondering any more lifestyle tips, quite obvious. Don't bully others. Alright, you do take care. Bye.